right, we're about to dive into a story that honestly feels like it's been pulled straight out of a science fiction movie. It's about a massive shift in medicine, a point where we stopped just fighting disease and actually started reprogramming our own bodies to win the war. And this one idea right here, this is the heart of it all. We're not talking about a tiny, incremental improvement. No, this is a huge leap forward in biology. The ability to literally edit the source code of our cells to take on our oldest enemy, cancer. So let's back up a second. What makes cancer so incredibly hard to fight? Well, it's not just a disease. It's a cunning evolutionary opponent. You see, it grows from our own cells, which means it learns how to wrap itself in a kind of camouflage, hiding in plain sight from our body's own security forces. And our number one defenders are these amazing cells called T cells. Think of them as the highly trained soldiers of your immune system. Their whole job, 24/7, is to patrol your body and destroy anything that isn't us. But here's the problem. Cancer is a traitor from within. It basically tricks the T cells into thinking, hey, I'm one of you, which allows it to just grow and spread completely unchecked. For decades, our main weapon against it was chemotherapy. And let's be honest, that's a blunt force approach. It's essentially a poison that we hope is slightly more toxic to the cancer than it is to the patient, and it causes all this horrible collateral damage. But we are finally entering a new era, an era of precision defense, where we can turn our own cells into living, breathing, heat-seeking missiles. And this isn't just some abstract theory happening in a lab. This entire revolution was born from desperation and a whole lot of hope. It's a story that really centers on one little girl whose life was on the line, a girl named Emily Whitehead. Emily was diagnosed with leukemia back in 2010. By early 2012, after she'd relapsed again and again, the doctors had run out of options. They said she was terminal. But then, she became the very first child to ever receive this radical, brand new experimental therapy. And within weeks, her cancer was gone, vanished. Today, she's a thriving, totally cancer-free pre-med student. Her story literally showed the entire world what was suddenly possible. So, how on earth did scientists pull off this miracle? Well, it's a process of taking our own soldiers, our T cells, and essentially giving them a superpower. The process itself is just so elegant. First, doctors take out some of the patient's own T cells. Then, and this is the clever part, they use a harmless, modified virus, like a tiny delivery shuttle, to get a new piece of synthetic DNA inside those cells. That DNA tells the T cell how to build a special sensor. Millions of these newly programmed, supercharged cells are then grown in a lab and simply reinfused back into the patient, ready to hunt. And that sensor, it's called a chimeric antigen receptor, or CAR for short. What's absolutely mind-blowing about the CAR is that it doesn't exist anywhere in nature. It is a completely lab-designed piece of technology that gives T cells the ability to finally see that invisible enemy, lock on, and, well, melt it away. But the story does not end there. CAR T-cell therapy was the breakthrough, absolutely, but the next evolution gives us even more precise control, and it uses a technology you've probably heard of by now, CRISPR. So if CAR T therapy is like giving a soldier new GPS coordinates, CRISPR is like upgrading their entire operating system. It acts just like a pair of molecular scissors guided to a super precise location in our DNA, allowing scientists to literally cut out old code and paste in new instructions. This is a game changer because it means we can go way beyond just telling a T cell what to attack. We can now edit its very source code to make it tougher. You see, tumors create this really hostile environment to shut down immune cells. But with CRISPR, we can add in resilience genes, making our programmed T cells hardier, more effective soldiers that can survive deep behind enemy lines and win the fight. Now, all this high-tech science can feel like it's a world away, but the logic behind it, this idea of protecting and programming our own code, it applies directly to every single one of us. So let's talk for a minute about what this means for your own health. Ultimately, you have to think of cancer risk as a game of probabilities. It's driven by accumulated damage, or mutations, to our DNA. So the single most powerful thing any of us can do is to reduce our exposure to mutagens, the very things that damage our DNA and create errors in our code. And it's not just about the really obvious risks like smoking. We're actually exposed to some surprising mutagens all the time. For instance, that char on barbecued meats, it contains carcinogens. And of course, unprotected sun exposure damages our DNA over time.
Now, the goal isn't to live in a bubble, but just to be mindful and manage these exposures where you can.
So it all boils down to a really clear two-part strategy. First, protect your DNA code. Actively try to reduce your exposure to those environmental mutagens. And second, support your soldiers. Bolster your immune system's natural surveillance power through the simple stuff, right? Quality sleep, good metabolic health, so your T cells are always charged up and ready to eliminate threats before they can ever take hold. We started this with the story of rewriting one girl's fate. But this technology, it's just getting started. It forces us to ask this really profound question. If we can now program our own cells with this kind of incredible precision, what other diseases, what other conditions that we once considered a death sentence are next on the list?